Hey there, friends. Welcome to the Being Brown and Bold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Thomas. We are so glad you are joining us for all of these amazing conversations about stepping out of our comfort zone, being bold, and taking chances. Today, I get to hang out with James A. Mathew, also known as Jam, who is CEO of the Outer Voice Company. What is that? It's a groundbreaking South Asian American entertainment group that operates across music, media, and events. He is a recording artist and a songwriter himself, as well as a global brand fellow for Nike. Raised outside of Chicago, James is a recent graduate of Harvard College, where he served as the 38th student body president. It is so great to have you here on the podcast today, James.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay, and this is how I know you, is because you were president of the student body. And aren't you the first, definitely the first Indian, right? But like, there's something else that was distinctive about you being president there.
Well, so I wasn't the first Indian, actually. I think I might have been the first Indian man. I know even in my time there was an Indian woman. I might have been. I won't say it officially, but I think what was most notable about our election was how we got elected. I think maybe it was how we connected. It was through the means of this crazy viral campaign video that was super fun and effective ultimately. But I think that was a lot of the buzz around the win.
Yeah. Maybe you're the first Malayali.
I think that's definitely true. Yeah, I think that is true. Yeah.
I think that's what it was. I didn't see the video. I saw it on the news.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling people, have you seen this?
Yeah.
One, this guy's at Harvard and he's rapping and doing hip hop. And he's the first like Malayali student president. So I was across the river. I went to Boston University. And so nice. It's really fun to see when Malayalis are like in the limelight, because it's not common, or it hasn't been common, right?
It's very true. Yeah.
So for brown people, names are really important. Names say a lot about where we're from, who we are. Tell us about your name, how you got it, what it means.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's probably twofold, my name, from what I can understand with my parents. I think on one dimension, James is a biblical name, and faith has always been very, very important in my family. And so I think most of my names, even when I think about myself, my brother, even most of my cousins, we all are Bible characters pretty much. So that's one level. And then I think the other one is my grandfather, my mom's dad, who passed the year before I was born. I think in many ways for my family, I was a bit of this, I was kind of filling a hole almost, it seemed, when he left, and there was just a period of real sadness in the family. And then I think there was a joy of a new baby. And his name was Chaco. And I think when you translate that most often, to English, you come up with either Jacob or James. And so I think that's the other reason behind my name being James.
Well, most people meeting you that are not part of Indian culture may look at you and be like, yeah, but what's your real name?
Confused. Yeah. 100%. That was a big one. I remember growing up with teachers, on the roll call, or especially if it was a substitute, it was kind of the backwards effect. I know so many of my South Asian friends with more probably what are considered South Asian names here, they'd have the issue on the roll with mispronunciation. I would never have the pronunciation issue, but it was almost the disbelief issue. They were confused, when I raised my hand to James. So, you pick your poison, but 100%, always kind of, confusing people my whole life.
Yes, and I feel the same thing.
Absolutely.
My last name is Thomas. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about your cultural heritage and how that actually flows into your life and your work?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's, I didn't always expect it to become such a big part of me and my work. So I'm Indian Americans, more specifically Malayali. And I think for a long time, that cultural background was more so something I had at home. It was something that I practiced in just the food we ate and, language that was being spoken, or, just some of our family friend circles and all of that. But at the same time, grew up in a very Caucasian neighborhood, where I was really the only diversity for many years, let alone kind of the only South Asian. So I think when you're a kid, different isn't cool, and you want to fit in and you don't want to be this different kid. And so probably for worse, that created a sense around my identity that was very compartmentalized. I had South Asian identity at home, but I didn't really carry it with me too much. I didn't want to stand out in that way. It was really only in college where I think I had my first critical mass of brown friends and peers in school, and where I got to be a part of like the cultural show and realize how much I was missing, honestly, by not wearing this and living this more proudly and externally. And then that spiraled into me creating a whole career and company out of a cultural mission, which even I think a year before I did it, I wouldn't have predicted I would do that, because it just wasn't who I was, honestly, in most of my upbringing.
I read in high school history books about Hinduism and Buddhism and people, Punjabis and all stuff, but I grew up in an Irish, Italian, Catholic neighborhood.
Okay.
And it was going to college. I'm like, wait, I've heard of Gujarati people, and Punjabi people, and I'm meeting all these people and different religions, like Zoroastrian, Jain, what is,
Yeah.
And I remember oh my word, but we're all part of the same subcontinent, and I have no idea, right?
100%. So much diversity within this place that we give one name, but it's really, it's so many places in one. South Asia and India, even itself, it's crazy.
Yeah. So okay, so you grew up in this homogenous neighborhood, kind of like this double life, but you grew up with Indian parents. So when you were little, what did you imagine your life would be like as an adult?
I think I definitely would have imagined something more conventional in terms of industry, in terms of career, for sure. I will say my dad is an entrepreneur, so there was risk taking, I guess you could say, at a broad level that I was around. I think any entrepreneur fundamentally is a risk taker. Any immigrant is a risk taker. So dad has both of those going for him. But I think I would have thought it's just more conventional what I would see, whether it would be medicine or law or even business, but definitely in more of a standard sector of business. I think entertainment, the creative industries, is definitely a bit of a curveball.
So when it came to your career, was it difficult to choose a vocational path for yourself? Yeah,
you know what, my story is a weird one into this space. It actually ties back into that viral video and the student government campaign, wherein that video that helped us get elected also somehow landed in front of the chief marketing officer of Converse. And it's a very long story that I'll make very short, but about 18 months after that video landed in front of the CMO, Converse was launching this South Asian record label with us. And it was a number of conversations of just our mission. When I say our, that's my brother and I were artists together and co-founders of all that we do together. And it was us getting to know the people at Converse, share about the representation issue of brown creatives in the mainstream, talk about this business vision and sort of what this could look like, and ultimately them giving some really strategic support behind it. So I like to say that I didn't really think I'd pursue this as a career until that wonderful door opened up for me to. And I think sometimes it goes that way. The convictions that we're chasing right now, the dreams we're chasing right now are lifelong dreams, absolutely. But I don't think, necessarily the leap happens if not for this very unconventional opportunity to pursue it. So, it was difficult a bit, but it also at the same time kind of came in a very organic way, and we didn't think twice. We didn't even take a second to run through.
So I think that's fascinating that Converse was wanting to do this, because I think of Converse and I just think of shoes or
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have made the crossover into entertainment, but you're saying it was an initiative they were taking. Is it like social change? Is that like part of what they were trying to do?
Basically they were, so this guy, so the CMO, a good friend of mine now, his name's Jesse. He sees this video and he says, hey, come into headquarters. What you're standing for in your campaign around representation and sort of diversity and creativity is really in line with a way that we're trying to move as Converse. I said, okay. So what I go there and learn is exactly that, kind of for a matter of social change and just a heart to really start supporting their consumers more and giving more than just shoes and selling product. Converse was on this journey of trying to figure out the brand that they want to be, and really what they want to do on a broader level. And it intersected so perfectly with our introduction to them. And basically it became this initiative that I started building at Converse called Converse All-Stars, which was like this community of young, diverse creatives trying to create change in entertainment, essentially. And after building that program with Jesse and the brand, I then got to be sort of a beneficiary of that program in launching and incubating the company that my brother and I launched. So it was all really, really organic and special how it came together.
That is really neat. Did you study market? What did you study in college?
Oh, so I was sociology and health policy. I was very pre-law. I'd say I was very pre-DC, and whatever that was going to mean, really, because I was drawn to that whole world. I spent my first 2 college summers there, actually. And whether that was policy, whether that was campaigns, whether that, I was just infatuated with that world. And it is still a love of mine in addition to entertainment. But then I think this opportunity came and it took us down a whole nother path. And I think it's felt really good because I think even in that world of policy, I really enjoyed the impact of the work. I don't think I was finding enough fulfillment in the day-to-day, and real enjoyment in the process. And I think one thing I've learned is that you can't just bank on a destination you're trying to reach. If you're not enjoying the day-to-day and the journey getting to that destination, you're probably going to end up pretty miserable. So I think what I have now is definitely a day-to-day that I really, really thoroughly enjoy.
I feel like, it's called work for a reason, right? Like it's work. How do you have that balance then of like, this is the work, it's difficult, it's sacrificial, and yet it should be in some sense life-giving, makes you happy, but it's not going to be like, I love my job every single day, right?
Yeah, no.
How do you find that balance, or how do you know you're doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think what helps in our business is the fact that my brother and I, we've made music together our whole lives. We are songwriters and artists. And funny enough, when this was all coming together in some of those conversations, one of them was, if we launch this, we think it'd make a lot of sense for you guys to, in addition to running the business, be the first artist as well, launch with some of your original work. And the fact that we get to combine our own creativity in the midst of this business, I think is a big answer to that question of how, I find a lot of excitement and even just joy in the day-to-day is because it's not just business that feels like work. It's also kind of my creative escape is baked into this business, so it's it's a really, really great setup for me.
It's like your hobby is your work.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet deal. Yeah.
That's really neat. So as you went along this path, which obviously had to turn because you're not in DC now. No. A lot of brown folks have struggles with honoring their parents as they're driving towards their dream. But this almost feels like, I didn't even know it was a dream I could dream. But as you're going this path, that's not conventional.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about job security or anything like that. Has there been any struggles with honoring your parents, honoring your family, and going this route?
Yeah, on one hand, they were very supportive, and I think what helped them be supportive was the fact that we were launching this and sort of the backing and association with Converse, I think provided a sense of stability and this idea that there's this corporation that's kind of a part of this. It's not just your conventional journey into entertainment or music. When you hear some of the stories about like, kind of roughing it in your car and playing shows, and huge, actually profound respect to that route of artists. But I think the fact that we were taking a bit of an unconventional route with the business and music intertwined was a comfort to my parents. At the same time, and to that point, actually, I think there was a lot of, they were more comfortable with the business side of the pursuit than the creative side, and they would almost even encourage that. I think in the past year or so, we've been doing this a little bit over a year and a half. And I think there's been, certainly moments of like them encouraging, just a focus on one area rather than the other. And I think, I think we take everything with a grain of salt, and we know that this general industry that we're in is very unpredictable, and it's very it lacks a lot of stability and security for sure. But I think we fundamentally believe that we're on a journey toward really significant impact and purpose, and it's worth the risk, and it's worth the instability, and I think over the past, especially 6 months, I think there have been encouraging signs of being on a good path, and hoping and feeling good that we'll be able to really continue doing this and scaling it. So that's been a great feeling too. But I'd say, especially in the early phases, when you start something and you're kind of lost about, okay, we launched it, what do we do now? And how are we going to make this work? And definitely moments there of worrying for ourselves, kind of facing some pressures from family for sure. But I feel like it's sorting itself out more or less.
I know that when I've seen you, or the Outer Voice Instagram page talking about events and concerts, it feels so exciting to watch that. I feel like there's this energy that I feel. But here's a question for all your artists that are on there: is this their main gig that they're doing, or is this like their side gig until it like grows?
Yeah, so it really varies, actually. We have a few of both of those. People who are, we've got a student, who, even my brother's a junior in college, so he's even himself still a student. We have a couple who are full-time pursuing music in different capacities. We have, someone who is in a corporate job, but making music, and every minute that they're not working. So it's a mix now. And I think that really is something that we at first were averse to. I think when we first started, we were like, man, we want people who are full in, really committed to being an artist. And then I think we realized that our community and our culture is nuanced. We're sort of maybe looking at sort of what we've seen in other artists or other stories. They dropped everything and they went out and lived just in LA, and did the whole thing, But I think that what we learned as we had more authentic conversations is that we're probably not going to find a whole lot of that. That's just not really how brown people get down. Like there's just, for a lot of reasons, social, familial, we are more kind of holding on to two things until we know that this one is worth jumping all the way into, and until we have some stability. So I think we've realized that it's not a fault if we see someone who's super talented and doing great music and making great art and they've still got their job. It's not a fault. Let's see how we can work with them. If they're really committed, stuff will get done regardless. And let's figure out how we can work together to try and scale their career and help them ultimately get to a point where they can make that full shift, and fully buy in. But that's been kind of a learning process, even from where we started in our mentality to now.
And it seems like a lot of South Asians have this thing where they have their main gig and then they have their side hustle. Is this like, from your observations, is this common for your generation? Or do you see this like, all the immigrants that have come here have always had side hustles?
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of that still, but I'm also seeing a lot of people take the leap in my generation. Actually, just the past week, I think talking to having caught up with 2 or 3 creative friends who are also running kind of different types of ventures. I've got one buddy who has built this awesome platform for Asian athletes, basically celebrating them, creating content around them, just incredible. And he was talking about how a couple months back, he quit his main gig and made his side hustle his main. And I feel like I'm seeing more and more of that nowadays, which is awesome. I think one, it indicates some level of success in what they're doing, right? For them to be able to do that. And two, I think it also just shows this generation really leaning into being brown and bold, frankly, and taking risks in a very big way. I also totally think that this generation is able to do that because of our parents' generation in many ways. So, but I am seeing more of people, really making the side hustle their real, the full deal.
I think that's really exciting, but I think you're right. Like that, the first generation that came to America, they're about survival, and the next group, I feel like, is about security. And then like each generation can have a little bit more freedom in their creativity, right? Because they're able to. I think one of the great things I love about what you all are doing is inclusivity. But what has surprised you in your ventures for inclusivity in leadership, especially as being a CEO here, but you're a leader in college? Anything pop out to you? Yeah,
I think what continues to be true in the entertainment industry, I have a lot of work that I do sort of in like the consumer brand world too. And I think even when I look at the leadership there, and leadership meaning the people with real financial and authority and real decision-making power, I think still in those roles, it's tough to find inclusive representation. I think we're seeing more representation at the of course, among the artists and the creatives themselves, and then among different sort of levels of leadership. Absolutely, people starting to rise up at some of the major labels or some of the major streaming platforms. And, we're definitely seeing more brown faces there, all different types of minorities. But I think when you really go up the ladder and look at the people who are making some of the big calls, the people that you need to really be approving budgets, or, just like here's this big event that we're going to put on, and this big commitment we're going to need from this brand. I think it's still tough to get the people in that decision-making room to really have a true appreciation for our community. I think I feel like in this country, a lot of the minority community sort of take turns in coming to the forefront and kind of coming to the mainstream importance in terms of when brands or filmmakers or anyone says we need to start addressing that community because they're important, right? They make a lot of decisions in society. And I do feel like we're in the moment of South Asians having our turn. I do think we are coming up now. We know sort of the other minority groups that I kind of have set the way, I think, and paved the way in many respects. I do feel like we're coming around where big brands and just big platforms are starting to say we need to tap in with this audience. We need to reach them. And so that's great for our business. We're starting to have a lot of conversations because of that. But I still think it's tough when there's not really anyone on the inside that has an appreciation for our audience and our mission, and that can really understand it on a personal level. Obviously, we can make a pitch and tell you, here are the numbers, here's our purchasing power, here's our size, here's our demographic, right? We can make that pitch, and we exist to make that pitch, frankly. But I think finding leadership at some of these mainstream players that are inclusive, that are really pushing for us internally, is still kind of tough to find.
So why is branding so important? You've been working in branding for a while. Why is branding so important?
I think it's how an audience comes to understand you. I think all of entertainment and content is really about the eyes and ears that you're trying to reach on the other side of it. You're trying to obviously speak to audience, attract them, to convert them into fans and believers in you as a brand and on behalf of your artists and all your creatives. And I think that branding, whether we're branding an individual artist or whether we're branding our brand, I think is how we let an audience know who we are and what we stand for and why, why they should take an interest in us. So for instance, one of the really intentional choices we made early on with the record label was the tagline, the South Asian American label, and I think we had so many conversations about, you want to do something that's representation forward. You also don't want to box yourself in, right? How do we toe this line? I think ultimately we felt that it was such a gap in this industry that we needed to be that forward. We needed to be that on the nose, at least at this onset, for people to see that and say, wow, this is new. I like this, I'm interested in, such a culture forward initiative in music. And I think we continue to stay with pretty intentional branding when it comes to our South Asianness. And I think that has been inviting actually from an audience standpoint. And now, especially as we look forward to this next year, it's really been inviting on the brand level too, like for collaborations, because I think we're super clear about who our audience is and who we can help you, the brand, reach. Here's who you can speak to through us and with us in partnership. So I think branding becomes so clear though, because it's how you let audience know, what they're backing.
I think it's interesting how you said, could you be putting yourself in a box? If you are, that's a gigantic box.
Well said. Yeah. And we have that conversation too, right? Because you think about this country's diaspora, but then you really think about the global diaspora. Then you think about the subcontinent, which has been an exciting development for us of late, starting to talk to some of the players over there in India itself, across music and media, and thinking about what collaborations could look like on a few different levels. But I mean, the size of our community alone is just massive and so powerful. Yeah.
Right. Have you encountered any pushback with your efforts in representation and community building?
I think that not so much pushback as in there's someone or some entity actively fighting our progress or pushing back on us, but definitely have encountered just, difficulties in terms of trying to build something that's rather new and kind of unfamiliar. I think one thing we realized early on is, okay, who's our target audience? It's an exercise that any new brand or company goes through, define our target. And so on one hand, we say, South Asian Americans or South Asian diaspora is our target. But because this is kind of a new category of a label dedicated to our talent in our community, it's not even that community that we're saying is our target is ready-made to receive us. It's because they've not been intentional about consuming something like this prior. So we have to sort of train this community of South Asian diaspora to say, yeah, we'd love to tap in and support a business dedicated to the talent in our community, right? And yeah, we like as representation just starts to matter more and resonate with people, we try to be this destination where this audience can find that representation and celebrate it and support it. But I think what we realize is that it's not even going to be an overnight thing where we say, hey, we're a South Asian company, and then all South Asians say, okay, I'm in. We've got to do a lot of that outreach work, in the form of content, in the form of events, which is a big thing we're leaning into. Because I think in post-COVID, all brands are seeing the shift back to physical and live, experience. And so that's been sort of a difficulty just when you're starting anything rather new. It's tough, and you've got to build a lot of things that don't really exist yet. But we learn as we go.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about your target audience. As I'm watching culture, I feel like there's more and more openness to things of South Asia. So watching the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the South Asians that were there.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've seen this movie, Murder Mystery 2.
I did. Crazy wedding scene. Yeah, it was fantastic.
When Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston are doing Indian dancing, something's happening.
Absolutely. My exact reaction when I saw both of those moments, and so much really right now. That's what I mean, where it really feels like we are up next. I think we are going to have our moment now in mainstream culture and media. And so And it's about trying to, as a company, I think support that moment as best as we can with the talent and creatives that we support.
That's really cool. I'm just so excited for all that you're doing. Now, you started off as Outer Voice Records, but now you've expanded. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so there was this, there is this very talented woman named Trisha. She had built this community called South Asian Productions throughout the pandemic. And it really was this community of broad level South Asian creatives. So there was artists, there was graphic designers, there was actors, models. It was a broad catch-all. And it was just this Instagram page of really creative empowerment, sort of reposting, spotlighting people in the community who are doing cool things. And she just built this awesome destination for these people to come and connect. And she was looking to just move on to her next career step. She was taking a new job and was looking to basically turn South Asian Productions inactive, just kind of, conclude her journey with that platform she had built. And we had known each other a bit sort of in this space, and we started having a conversation, and really it just felt like the heart of what we were trying to do and our mission was so aligned with the mission that she had when she was building this community, so much so that she felt really good about us taking over this platform and adapting it to our company's branding and sort of aligning it with our existing record label vertical. So that takeover acquisition became the foundation for Outer Voice Media, which is sitting now adjacent to Outer Voice Records. And media intends to do a lot of the same mission, objective, community building operations, but in more of a visual medium. So we're producing a variety of short series right now, and some short like kind of YouTube show type content. We're doing a lot of events there that are like adjacent to music, but not limited. So like we've done a comedy showcase, and we're doing several more of those soon in the coming months. So just kind of a great like entertainment vertical that's not music, but is obviously related and helps us really organize a great community. So it's just expanded the opportunities, I'd say, for us as a brand to, again, serve this target audience with, more content and just more, diverse output.
That's so great. I love hearing about all that. It's just so exciting. I'm assuming this takes a lot of hours out of your life because you're like pouring yourself into it. So yeah. Switching gears, what are some things that are life-giving for you that are outside of the entertainment world?
Yeah. So I think that what has become big for me is, well, what's always been big in my life that I really enjoy is food and friends. So I feel like getting food with friends and, just hanging out with people that, at this point, I think I'm in this interesting phase of like this early adulthood, like this early post-college adulthood, where now I think friendships really require a certain level of intentionality. I think when you're growing up in high school and college, I've been reflecting on this with some buddies of mine lately, like you are easily able to find friends because it's super convenient. You're in the same place from this time to this time. In college, even more so, you're going to school and living with people, right? But when you're now at this stage of life, you've got to make an effort to stay close to people, because it's not convenient anymore necessarily to. So with that being said, I feel like I've been lucky to really hone in on a handful of, these are the, really close people in my life. My brother being one of them, a built-in best friend, which is awesome to have. And I'm so fortunate, but, even beyond just, now having just a good circle of people around me that I get to spend time with. I think that's life-giving. Try and, exercise as much as I can. Both my brother and I grew up playing really competitive soccer, and that was a part of me that kind of left when I went, in my more recent years, but still finding ways to stay active and sort of like fitness in some capacity has always been really important and helpful for just like my physical health and like mental health, honestly. Yeah. And then also apart from my work, I'm a huge lover of and consumer of entertainment. So like, there's nothing more than I love than going to the movies. Like I love the theater. And I know streaming platforms are convenient now and easy, but for me, it's like the AMC is something entirely different. So I love going to movies, and listening to music probably way too many hours of the day when I'm doing anything music's on. So actually consuming this thing that I work around is actually a huge passion as well.
Yeah, that's really fun. So, I mean, you've been around different South Asian cultures, growing up in your home, going to Boston, like you've encountered so many different cultures.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen faith expressed differently in each of those pockets. Has faith or any belief system informed your outlook in life?
Yeah, absolutely. Big time. Yes, I am. Faith is actually a very big part of my life. I was raised very Christian. I say very Christian because, I'm from one of those families where there's several pastors. It's really a core belief system and a core part of my upbringing. It's just the faith and the practice of it. I think when I went away to college, as most kids probably go through when they've been raised very strongly in a religion, is they probably don't do as great of a job as doing it for themselves. But I think after especially a couple of years of college of slacking a little bit, I found myself really just wanting to come back to it. And at this point, it is a big part, just a weekly church service. And, I'll read the Bible almost daily. I try to. And so faith is a big part of my life. And actually, I've been lucky, especially in college, to find a couple close friends, really close friends, who I could share that with and grow in with, which was really special. But at the same time, I think it's really important to have very diverse circles. That's been a theme of mine for definitely the past 5 years, especially of all, cultural backgrounds, of all religions, especially now, because the South Asian diaspora is what it is, and doing the work that I do, I'm most often around people and working with people and socializing with people who are of a different religion. And I think that that's actually really important. I think, we're best when we surround ourselves with diverse crowds. So I really appreciate, just as much as I appreciate, people that I can practice my faith with, I also really, really appreciate having, people that have different backgrounds, but honestly, that we share so much, similarity with.
And that's, one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I wanted to have a diverse group of guests from all different backgrounds, all different faiths, so that we can all listen to each other and learn from each other. Because if you can't love each other, like nobody's ever going to agree with everybody on everything.
Yeah.
But we still should be working at minimum getting along with each other, but really like loving people wherever they're at. So it's been neat to hear everybody's perspective. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays talk about spirituality way more than I've ever heard before, because people recognize that they are whole people, mind, body, soul, spirit. So that's really great. What is something that is stereotypical of your culture or background that is actually true?
I think there's a stereotype around brown boys, especially, that are we're incredibly close to our moms, like we're mama's boys. I hear that a ton, especially from like South Asian women now in my generation, as more so a complaint. I feel like that's a stereotype that is true. It's true in my case. I feel like, just generally speaking, the idea that like our families and our parents are involved in everything that we do, and sort of that the Western culture often finding that really weird and kind of invasive, that parents are in your business, or, having this role in who you're dating or who you marry and all this stuff. Like, I think those are, in most cases, true stereotypes. I think we have a culture that deeply values family and prioritizes those values. And so, it is a part of us that informs a lot of how I think my generation still navigates our daily lives, is, what our parents have to say about things. And, and of course, it's important to find your individuality, I think, and have that independence. But I think the idea of, family being really important and sometimes a little invasive and controlling is probably true.
We're not invasive and controlling. Okay, because we're Indian, I have a couple of questions to ask. Do you have a curry leaf plant?
So what's great for me, I'm in this interesting period right now where pretty much every weekend I'm traveling for work stuff. So it's mostly to New York. I'm from Chicago, but it's mostly to New York or to LA or to Boston or somewhere else. So when I'm home, usually in the middle of the week from like Tuesday to Thursday, when I'm home, I'm at my home that I grew up in. And so definitely we have one here that's getting used all the time and you know, what's happening in the kitchen. And yeah, you got to, it's like a rite of passage. You got to own one of those.
I agree it's a rite of passage. All three of my kids moved out and 2 out of 3 have a curry leaf plant. The third one was just in college, but he's actually about to move into his own place. And I'm planning on, he probably won't listen to this. I'm planning on sending him with a curry leaf plant as like you are now adulting. If you have your own space where you can have your own curry leaf plant.
Yeah, that's when it's serious. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to get one. If I make a solid move to New York one of these days, it'll be one of the first things I get.
That's fun. Okay, real quick, chai, tea, coffee, or another beverage?
Chai or tea. I don't do coffee, but I do unsweet kind of black tea just about every day. So, but chai definitely is a treat as well.
Yeah. What would you say to 18-year-old James based on everything you know now?
I wouldn't have him change anything, actually. Like on one hand, I look back sometimes and I chose this career really late. I didn't study something too relevant to it. You know, I spent, again, half of my college, most of what I learned in the classroom, so a lot of like the summers I spent in a very different space than what I'm doing now. But I actually think there was something really important of trying different things and ultimately then landing on this that, you know, where I learned so much in the process. And so I'm really a believer in, you know, everything for a reason. And that's actually probably pretty faith-based. But so yeah, I think I tell my 18-year-old self to, you know, continue taking each day by day as I believed it back then. And as I thought I wanted it back then. Because I kind of like how everything played out.
Yeah, it's a fun story to just hear your whole path.
Yeah.
Is there something you would like the listeners to know if they are hesitant about making a bold move themselves?
One thing I found really helpful is making some community out of other bold people. That's actually been really a development, especially the past few months, is in the South Asian space, there's a number of founders and, you know, people like this who have started their own thing and who are pretty risky in their nature. And so having friends like that I can, you know, lean on and sort of get insights from, and also we can just sort of share this thing in common together is really helpful. And it's an encouragement, I feel, to continue being bold. So I'd say to anyone who's thinking about being bold, you know, if you know someone who you think is, you know, try and talk to them and connect with them and, you know, have them inspire you. I think, you know, we're great inspirations to each other when we, you know, when we're able to connect.
That's great advice. Yeah, because you start looking like the people you hang out with, right?
Exactly. Completely.
Do you have anything you'd like to share that's coming up for you or with Outer Voice?
Yeah, you know, so much. Actually, I mean, we're looking at about an event a month this year. So we're doing this party next weekend in New York, and then I think we've done everything in New York so far, but I think we're going to go to LA in the coming months, and we're going to come to Chicago this summer as well. So tons of events that, you know, we're always posting about on our social channels. A lot more music and you know, we're really starting to get to a point where we're focused on a few artists that I think we're really serious about, that we're so inspired by and have so much belief in. So really starting to, you know, promote those artists even more heavily, and a lot of new content. Yeah, so honestly, so much more output that we're going to be coming up with that we're excited for people to see and hopefully respond to and connect with.
That's great. Yeah, we will put all the links in our show notes so that people can click and keep up and follow and like and subscribe and all the things.
100%.
James, thank you so much for sharing about your life. It's been great to hang out with you and hear all the things.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So please head over to our website, beingbrownandbold@wordpress.com. You can find all the links for the show. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Being Bold and Brown. We will be right back here next week to drop our next episode. Till then, be wise and be bold.